After that, rumors started to spread. The people on the street of Rome said that it was their own emperor, Nero, who had ordered the fires to be set, that he had instructed his soldiers to stop the firefighters from putting it out. And as a result, Nero was losing his political base in his own capital city. So Nero, in an act of desperation, shifted the blame to the Christians. He said that it was the Christians who had set Rome on fire. There was already suspicion, if not animosity, toward those that were followers of the way, but Nero made it official, and he ordered that large numbers of Christians be crucified along Roman roads. He ordered that Christians have sewn over them animal skins that were still fresh with the animal's blood, and then that they be thrown to wild beasts so that they could tear them apart. According to Tacitus, Nero ordered that Christians be covered with pitch and then hung on hooks and set afire to light the imperial gardens during dinners and parties. St. Peter wrote 3 years later in AD 67, Christians, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God. Christians refuse to renounce their faith in Jesus Christ. Even though pagans accused them of doing wrong, they did that which was right. And they did it in such a sterling manner that even their executioners sometimes came to faith and replaced them in the ranks of the church. It was stunning. Tertullian was right that the blood of the martyrs became the seed of the church. And so the first century church made God look good. They enhanced the reputation of God. 100 years later, the persecution was mounting again in the Roman city of Smyrna. The year was AD 155, and the proconsul of Smyrna issued an order for the arrest of the bishop Polycarp, who by then was almost 100 years old. Those in the church hid him out in a barn on a farm, but they found him. They brought him into the arena where there were thousands of bloodthirsty pagans who wanted the bishop killed, and they called for his burning at the stake. But the proconsul, for a moment, had pity on this old man, and so he hushed the crowd. And then he shouted to Polycarp out in the arena, and he said, Polycarp, curse the Christ and live. And Polycarp, they say, with unusually strong voice, answered and said, 86 years have I served him, and he has done me no wrong. How then can I blaspheme the king who saved me? And proconsul's hand came down, and Polycarp died as a martyr for Jesus Christ. And he made God look good. Even in his death, he enhanced the reputation of God. But it doesn't have to be the first century. It can be the 21st century. For the first time a few years ago, Charlene and I visited Calcutta, India. While there, we visited Serampore, the home base for William Carey. Carey lived 200 years ago. He was a British cobbler by trade who left his homeland never to return and devoted his life to the translation of the Bible into the multitude of tongues in East India and that region. In his lifetime, he founded Serampore University, which has become a premier college in India. He translated part or all of the Bible into 40 different languages. But I think what stunned me was when we got off the train at the Serampore station, there was a quote from William Carey that was painted on the wall of the station that said, attempt great things for God, expect great things from God. William Carey glorified God. He made God look good. But while we were in Calcutta, we visited the hospice that was the beginning of the career in India of Mother Teresa. And we saw cot after cot of those who had been brought off the streets of Calcutta and cleaned up and were dying, and dying with dignity, all because she sought to do it in the name of Jesus Christ. And then we went to the headquarters of the Sisters of Charity, the orphanage there. We visited not on the left side where there are the attractive children that are up for adoption in Western countries. We visited instead on the right side where there are children with the most severe of disabilities and deformities, with appearances that make you want to gasp. Children that neither their own mothers wanted, nor would anyone come and ask to adopt. And what I felt in that very difficult place was a happiness, a beauty, a joy in children that were cared for and loved in obedience to the words of Jesus to care for the very least of society. There were volunteers that were there from all over the world helping the poorest of the poor. They're representing the God of love and compassion, and they wanted to make God look good. And the stories roll on. It was there in Calcutta that we visited for the first time, and I've since gotten to know well a couple named Carrie and Annie Hilton. They are New Zealanders who simply wanted to do something to enhance the reputation of God. They moved from Auckland to Calcutta. And Carrie went out one day looking for a place for them to live. Day is a key part of that story. He found a flat and he signed a lease and later brought his family to live there, not realizing that he had just rented a home in the middle of the red light district with teenage children there to be raised who were fresh and new to India. But they decided to stay there. The Serengeti red light district of Calcutta has in excess of 6,000 women in an area that is about 12 blocks in size. They are lined up shoulder to shoulder along the streets. It is a breathtaking place of difficulty and depravity. And they committed to start a sewing factory in the name of Jesus Christ. By the end of the first year or two, they had 50 women. They don't force them to leave any religious or cultural background, but they introduce them to the truth of Jesus Christ, and frankly, most come to Christian faith. They're moving now toward a number of 500 and doing something that I find astonishing. When the women leave the sex trade and are offered a better job with benefits and better pay, sewing bags that are sold around the world, what they are encouraged not to do is move out of that red light district. They are encouraged to keep the rooms they rent because the Hiltons know that if those women move out, somebody else's daughter will be kidnapped or some other woman will be sold into this slavery. And so they are place savers. They're holding the spot so that others will not be trapped in the sex trade. And I look at that and think, the Hiltons make God look good. On and on the list goes of those who live for Jesus Christ in a way that enhances the reputation of God. St. Paul said it in 1 Corinthians 10:31, that whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. That is the church, and those are the Christians who transform our 21st century generation. Whether you are a martyr like Polycarp or a millionaire, famous like Mother Teresa, or someone that few have heard of like Carrie and Annie Hilton. It is day by day, church by church, Christian by Christian, enhancing the reputation of God. But there's practicality to all of this. And so I have added to the list the importance that if we are to be first century churches in a 21st century world, that we minister contextually. For the last couple of years, I have been studying and teaching from the New Testament book of Acts and have found it to be nothing short of a handbook for contemporary ministry. The first century church was deeply rooted in Jewish tradition. And in order to evangelize Jews, the Christians respected and honored the Jewish traditions that they perpetuated even in the early church. So Paul, in his itinerant ministry, when he would go to a town, always began at a synagogue, always. He would go there and he would go on the Saturday Sabbath day, even though he was a Sunday resurrection Christian. He would accommodate them in their culture. And if there weren't enough Jews to form a synagogue, then he would go out by the riverside and he would go to that place of prayer on the Sabbath day where God-fearers were gathered. And if that didn't work, then he would move on to a non-traditional population. When there were no Jews, he took the approach that he followed in Acts chapter 17, where he climbed up onto Mars Hill and he talked to the pagans of Athens about their unknown God. There had been an epidemic that had swept through Athens, and when they had offered sacrifices to every god they knew and that didn't work, they set up altars for unknown gods and gave sacrifices to them, hoping that they could stem the epidemic.